The late afternoon finding the newlywed having secured and loaded their budget rental truck, and Sammy, Fran's dear Chihuahua, readied for the journey west. Gary having a concern about Fran, as they said farewell to her Granada Drive residence, and the memories of the past harboring within. With the exertion of moving, the lateness of the hour, and Gary's aversion to driving at night in unfamiliar surroundings, it was decided to get a bite to eat and spend a final night in the Orlando area. A morning awakening at the Best Western Mount Vernon in Winter Park, the rental truck discovering Interstate 75, the north-south, central corridor of Florida. As the hours passed, Gary not fathoming the length of the Sunshine State, the drive finally intersecting Interstate 10 in the Florida Panhandle, providing a westward turn. The rental truck with its 55 miles per hour governor was going to make a long journey seem even longer, crossing the Alabama state line, saying goodbye to Florida, not realizing the interstate distance to cross Alabama from Florida to Mississippi in this part of the state was only 62 miles. Coming into view, entering the George C. Wallace Tunnel beneath the Mobile River, exiting with a panoramic view of the city's high-rises. Having spent over 10 hours on the road, Mobile was designated for the night's stay. Gary being aware the interstate motels would be located on the outskirts of the metropolitan area, and more than likely an exit sign posting for food and lodging. The threesome spending the night at a Motel 6. Once again traveling west on Interstate 10, a 70-mile sprint across the lower part of Mississippi at 55 miles per hour. Once in Louisiana at the Interstate Exchange, 10 goes south to New Orleans. Interstate 12 is inaugurated for 85 miles to Baton Rouge, where Interstate 10's westward trek resume. Crossing the Mississippi River, the iconic waterway hosting the vessels of commerce, as it continues on its 2,340-mile journey to the Gulf. Still another 10-hour journey. A brief Sammy stop in Beaumont, Texas, the home of the 1901 Spindletop oil field and the gusher which blew in for 9 days, at a rate estimated at 100,000 barrels of oil per day, and inaugurated the United States into the oil era. Continuing on, the travelers leaving Interstate 10 at Houston to travel north on Interstate 45, the couple calling it a day at Conroe, Texas. A feeling of home, the congenial lady behind the motel counter addressing him with that slow Texas southern drawl. Gary having traveled for several years in Texas from his band playing days, recognizing the commonality of these gracious people. The couple spending their second night on the road before resuming their trip north on Interstate 45. Gary appreciative of Fran's knowledge diversity, there being no lack of conversation because of subject matter. The driver with the pedal to the metal or a reasonable facsimile, happy to be back on familiar turf as they journeyed through Dallas, boarding Interstate 35, towards the Red River with Oklahoma looming. The budget rental truck arriving in Oklahoma City, a surrogate home to Gary for almost 20 years. The drive to 3019 Southwest 124th Street was second nature, his daughter Marlo's family sharing half of her mother's duplex. Gary ringing the doorbell, not receiving a response, stepping next door, Kay coming to the door, somewhat startled to see her ex-husband, presuming that he was still in California. Having no idea that he had journeyed to Florida and now was married. Gary briefly explaining the situation, having detoured to Oklahoma City so Marlo could meet Fran. Kay briefly saying, Marlo, Chris and the kids were at a house they were looking at in Moore. Giving him directions. Gary thanking her and asking if you would care to meet Fran who was sitting in the truck. Her answer was blunt, I think not. Upon arrival at the Moore location, discovering his daughter and son-in-law Chris were at a storm causality home, a victim of the May 3, F5 tornado with winds of 318 mph that destroyed over 1,780 residential homes. Gary at a loss for a means to communicate his unexpected marriage in a way to initiate some understanding from Marlowe. But she brushed aside his words without any acknowledgement. Instead directed the conversation to talking about the deluge of damage and devastation caused by the tornado. He had hoped for a better introduction, but realized it was futile. Ending the visit, they still had a long trip ahead of them. Gary deciding they would spend the night in Oklahoma City, staying at the Motel 6, across Meridian Avenue from where spent almost 5 years of his life performing 6 nights a week in the 60s and 70s at the Pirates Cove Club, in the now removed Holiday Inn West. The morning found them heading northwest to Kiowa, his home for 20 years, to introduce Fran to some special Kansas people he had worked with. Gary having made this journey numerous times for more than 22 years, a sense of melancholy filtering in his explanation, it might be a long time or never traversing this roadway again. The drive through Okarche, Kingfisher, Dover, Hennessy, and Wacomiss. The Cimarron River. The dampness bouquet of the pasture land, the many memories all being way stops in the road of life.